It ain't JY's flow without tight rhymes. It ain't a Pittsburgher without the fries from the nation's.
Hey yo, and welcome into another edition of the Yinzer Crazy podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in and supporting us. We are, of course, sponsored by Steel City Wheelhouse and supported by YinzerCrazy.com. My name is Mike Nicastro. You can find me on Twitter at MikedUpSports1 for all of your Steelers, Pirates, Pitt, Penguins, and more hot takes. I love doing it for you, and I love the positive energy of Pittsburghers day in and day out. It is a ton of fun to be able to put out content for you guys. We did make an announcement recently through our Yinzer Crazy platform that we have a new show coming to town. We're very excited to expand. We're bringing on just 4 incredibly strong, kick-ass females, giving them their own platform in a show called Yinzeritas. So we have some huge guests that are going to be gracing their show, of course, and we also released our teaser trailer on YouTube. So make sure you go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel over at Yinzer Crazy for all of the relevant updates forthcoming. All right, I know why you joined this show. Once again, it's not to listen to me, it's to listen to our guests today. And I'm really excited, obviously, because one, it's draft season. As I mentioned, the Steelers obviously have been looking at running backs heavily. And Isaac Redman, a former Steelers running back, former Steelers starting running back, I should say, from 2009 to 2013, joins the show to talk a little bit about his time in the black and gold. He was just a terrific guy to talk to, shared some good memories, and we had a couple laughs with the big man, the bowling ball out of Bowie, not Bowie State. The other guy we're talking to is the National Director of Recruiting for Rivals.com, only the biggest scouting site in existence. He's the godfather of recruiting, and that's not self-proclaimed. His name is Mike Farrell, and we are dropping his entire interview in full where he talks Steelers draft, some of his favorite quarterback prospects, some of his not-so-favorite quarterback prospects, which we happen to disagree on, and plenty more other great stuff. Can't wait for you guys to hear it. All right, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Make sure, once again, you're subscribing to us on YouTube at Yinzer Crazy and follow us on Twitter at Yinzer Crazy Show. It's all love, baby. Here we go. Isaac Redman, first up. We have running backs on our mind as the NFL draft approaches very quickly. And of course, who better to talk about Steelers running backs than a former Steeler running back? For 5 years, in fact, from 2009 to 2013, out of Bowie State. Don't get that twisted. It's Isaac Redman. Isaac, what's going on, man?
Not much, man. How you doing?
Good. How many times do people call it Bowie State? Do you ever get sick of that?
I heard it a lot, man. But it is what it is. They're starting to put their name on the map a little bit more nowadays, though.
Yeah, for sure. Well, it is Bowie State to anybody out there that wants to call it Bowie, not like David Bowie. But hey, man, let's talk Steelers and NFL draft a little bit, because obviously you were somebody who went undrafted at the end of the 2009 draft. I'm reading some quotes from you here in an article where you talked about your mom being so excited that you signed with the Steelers, and she was crying and things like that. How difficult of a process was it for you to go undrafted and then kind of play that waiting game?
It was pretty difficult. It was a pretty cool story how I even made it there, because the Steelers were actually the only team to reach out to me in free agency. Sometimes you have that game where guys are free agents, but they're high-priced free agents that just made it, just didn't get drafted, and have about 10 teams, kind of bidding for them. I got about $1,800 signing bonus. Was the only team called, but it was Bruce Arians' tight relationship with my uncle, Todd McNair. He had coached my uncle Todd McNair at Temple, and then coached when my uncle played for the Kansas City Chiefs, and they had a close relationship. And my uncle kind of reached out to him a little while before the draft, and that's how I actually got to Pittsburgh.
That's pretty cool stuff, man. And you know what? I was going to ask you about your uncle, Todd McNair, who's an NFL veteran. He obviously took you under his wing. I read somewhere that he used to take you to Cleveland Brown practices where he was a running backs coach. Did you grow up a Browns fan?
No, I grew up an Eagles fan. I live in New Jersey, but it's like the Philadelphia side. I live in South Jersey. And, when he was coaching there, well, actually, I think Bruce Arians was the offensive coordinator. And he he was out there coaching, I would come down to training camp and be like a ball boy, and and he would take me to camps and drove me over to a camp actually at the University of Pitt. I had went to a camp there my junior year. He just always took me under my wing and just guided me and gave me the guidance that I needed.
Really is incredible stuff, man. You mentioned that your uncle Todd really helped you get noticed by Bruce Arians and develop that relationship. So he sent a tape over of you at Bowie State, right? And maybe even high school days to Bruce. And Bruce went to the coaching staff apparently and Coach Tomlin and said, let's take a chance on this guy. Is that pretty much, do I have that right?
Yeah. Coach Tomlin told me one day, we were just talking at practice, and he said, you were the last guy we picked up. He said, I was tired of being here. He was like, we were trying to figure out who was the last guy we were going to pick up. And Mike said, well, let's give the kid from Bowie a chance. Let's get out of here. Wow. And he said, that's how I got there. And I wound up staying there 5 years.
Wow, man. Well, I tell you what, it's a good thing he said that. Obviously, Steeler Nation was happy to have you around. You eventually turned that $1,800 into a starting running back gig with the Pittsburgh Steelers, which is pretty damn cool, and I'm sure a lot of people can't say themselves, man. I want to talk to you a little bit about some of those teams. Obviously stacked Hall of Famers on those teams. You know, guys like Pouncey, Hines Ward, Ryan Clark, Troy Polamalu, of course, Big Ben. Is there any relationship in particular that stands out for you to this day, and maybe somebody you keep in contact with that listeners would be interested to hear?
I really don't keep in contact with too many people. Like Mike Wallace, me and him were pretty cool. And David Johnson, who had played fullback and tight end for a while, me and him are really close. And so they're probably like the only two guys that I actually still keep in contact with. But my playing days there, I had a close relationship with a lot of those guys.
Yeah, for sure. No question about it. I mean, even guys I didn't mention, Heath Miller, Charlie Batch, just really a legendary Steelers team that you, of course, are right in that mix, man. When we turn on the tape from 2009 to 2013, you're going to see 33 in black and gold. I got to ask, are you obviously you're out of the NFL now. You're telling me you're in Jersey, and we'll get into that your post-career football life. But are you still a fan of the Steelers? Do you consume games, or for you, are you kind of a neutral observer?
I'm definitely a Steelers fan. My son is a crazy Steelers fan. I have 3 kids, but my oldest son is like crazy Steelers fan. And I still root for the Eagles, but my playing days, I didn't really care about the Eagles as much, because I grew up such a diehard Eagles fan, which is so weird to me, not caring about the Eagles at all. But now that I've been done playing and I've been done for a while, I kind of got back into the rooting for the home team. But I also definitely keep an eye on the Steelers. Yeah,
I guess that can all change pretty quickly after you sign a contract and put on the jersey, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I hear that, man. I hear that. Hey, obviously the NFL draft is right around the corner. I just mentioned it, and we started with that. I want to pick your brain and ask what kind of advice you would give for, say there's a running back, a guy out there in the 4th or 5th round who, a projected 4th or 5th round pick maybe, who doesn't get drafted, or a guy that is expecting to go high who goes later in the draft and is kind of down on himself. What's the advice you would give, having been kind of in those shoes, having to really fight for a spot in camp?
I would just say take everything as it's your last. Never leave anything out there, for you to say, oh, I wish I could have did this, or I wish I could have done that. Because, when you're done playing, you're done. It could be, you could have a 15-year career, or your career could last 1 year. But you don't want to live with any regrets. As far as me and my personal experience, I dealt with a lot of adversity, and, a lot of times being cut and put on practice squad. But, all that, just use all that for fuel and motivation to get better. Each year you would want to get better and just strive to be great. And that would be my advice, man, because, it's hard. And the one thing I live by was, the hardest part is getting on the team. You've been playing football your whole entire life. Mm-hmm. Football is what comes easy. And that's how it was for me. I think the hardest part for me was just to get somewhere. I was very confident in my athletic ability to be able to compete at a high level. So, the hardest part is getting there and playing football is what you do.
Certainly great advice for future Steelers running backs, and obviously there'll be some new faces on the team this season as the turnover continues. Hey, listen, man, I know you're spending a lot of time now doing what your uncle did for you, which is kind of giving back, reciprocating. and spreading the love down there in Paulsboro, New Jersey. So you're coaching football still?
Yeah, my first 3 years I coached in my hometown, Paulsboro, New Jersey. I was coaching 7th to 8th grade football. When I first came back around this area, my football in my neighborhood, they didn't have a little league football program anymore for like a year, and they were struggling with kids coming out. So I just did my part, and just along with a lot of other coaches and parents, to try to get the community together and get the kids back out for football. And we were able to, bring the program back, and we won 3 championships in a row on the 7th to 8th grade level. And my oldest son, once he got old enough to play, I started coaching his team in the neighborhood that we live in, which is called Deptford, New Jersey. So now I've just been coaching my son for the past 3 years.
That's tremendous, man. It really is. What is it like coaching your son? Is he coming to you on the sideline sometimes and is like, Dad, what's going on, man? Get me the ball, or is it more of just like a coach-player relationship when you get it between the lines?
I mean, it's always good when your son's really good. So, my son's really good. We actually, a couple years ago, the NFL Hall of Fame holds a national championship game out there, and we actually won the national championship, NFL Hall of Fame national championship. We went down Canton, Ohio, and beat a team from Cincinnati in the championship game. And so that was, it was like almost winning the Super Bowl, and being able to do that with my son, it was an amazing feeling.
Well, you're used to doing that, man. If Pittsburghers don't lose to Cincinnati, and you know that well enough, man. So that was a given. Hey, congratulations on that. That's really cool stuff, and it's great to hear that you're still in the game and giving back. Isaac Redman here on the Yins Are Crazy podcast. Hey, man, I mentioned the Steelers need a running back. You ready to lace them up? 33 again, I think, is open on the team.
Oh, man, I wish I could. I'll tell you that. I wish I could.
I know that shelf life is relatively short these days, and you were, of course, fortunate enough to do it for 5 years, which a lot of guys will take, as for sure, in 2020 or 2010 through 2020, I should even say. Hey, man, all the best to you and the family. It was cool catching up with you. Like I said, we're excited to share this podcast and share your thoughts before the Steelers will likely draft another running back to the black and gold relatively soon here, man. So all the best to you.
Man, thanks, man. I appreciate you having me.
Gotta love that dude, man. It's always a pleasure catching up with a former Steeler and a recent Steeler, of course, a guy that is not too far removed from the team. As he told you, he's still watching, listening, and tuning into games, as he mentioned, whenever he can. Just a little further south of Pittsburgh down there in Jersey, or southeast, I should say, as I get out my compass. I'm not the best geographically over here, but want to thank Isaac Redman. What a good dude for joining us on the podcast. Kind of out of nowhere, he obviously kind of got in touch with him and mentioned that he was interested in chatting Steelers with us, so would never turn away a guy like Isaac. All right, let's get to our next guest. Some of you might have heard him on Yinzer Hour already, but we're releasing his interview in full. This is the godfather of recruiting. He knows these players entering the NFL draft probably just as good as the Todd McShays, Mel Kipers, Daniel Jeremiah's, and Bucky Brooks of the world. He truly is an expert on all things scouting, and I can't wait for you to hear from him. He's none other than Mike Farrell of Rivals.com.
So my first question is, we think we're probably a 3-star show right now. How do we get up to a 4-star show? Well, is it fluid hips?
I think, honestly, to get to the 4-star level, it's going to take a lot more downloads, a little bit more work, and the Steelers got to win more games. That'll bring more interest, I think, from the fans, so you'll be all set.
I know that. It's great analysis from the godfather of recruiting. He's been doing it for over 20 years. He's a national recruiting director at Rivals.com. You can follow him on Twitter at RivalsMike, and we're thankful to be joined by him this evening to break down some Pittsburgh-related scouting topics. And I, of course, first want to start with the NFL draft. We're obviously now in draft mode, full on, of course, in Pittsburgh, man. We're a little over, 3 weeks away. They're under 3 weeks away at this point, I should say, which is unbelievable. It always comes by so quick. You put out a tweet recently that intrigued me. It had some guys that I think are potential prospects that the Steelers will be looking at in it. And those were, I'll start in order to get your evaluations. The first is Naji Harris, who is a player, obviously, that is all on our radar, has been on our radar for a long time, the Alabama stud running back. And you considered him undervalued. Why did you put him in that context?
I think all running backs are being undervalued now. They all seem to have either a late first round grade or they dropped to the second round. And, Naji Harris, coming out of high school, was the number one player in the country. He was an elite talent. He decided to stay at Alabama when he didn't have to. Worked on a lot of different things, including blocking. He can catch the ball. He's big. He's got quick feet. I mean, he's an absolute home run as the number one running back in this class, and he's being talked about, in the 20 to 30 range. And I'm not saying he should be a top 10 pick, but if Leonard Fournette and Christian McCaffrey were both top 10 picks, this kid should be in that discussion. And maybe, McCaffrey's injury and Fournette's average career kind of ruined it for him, but Naji Harris can do all the things that Christian McCaffrey did, and he's much, much bigger and more physical. So I think he's an absolute steal late in the first round.
It's great news for Steeler fans because obviously their running game was putrid last year. They finished 32nd in the entire league in average yards per game. James Conner won't be back. And the depth chart, it doesn't have much staying power at the top of it right now. So if they can get a horse like Najee or Travis Etienne, that would go a long way. A couple other guys that were on that list that caught my eye. Azeez Ojulari, the edge from Georgia. This is a guy who apparently has all the physical traits. The Steelers just lost another SEC edge, former SEC edge, and Bud Dupree, the former Kentucky product. Well, why do you like Ojulari so much?
Edge guys, hybrid guys from Georgia have had some success. Leonard Floyd took a little while to emerge, but, SEC hybrid guys are to me, very valuable. This is a kid who could stand up as a linebacker. He's 6'3", he's about 260 pounds. He's not a huge natural defensive end, so he's probably going to be a stand-up guy. But as a pass rusher, he flattens out very well. He ran a 4.6. He's extremely physical, hard worker. I mean, we've known the kid from his high school days and through camps, and then obviously at Georgia. And everybody speaks well about kids at their own program. But when you talk to people who play it against him, when you talk to, teammates, they all rave about him. And this is not a great edge rushing year. I think Jalen Phillips moved way up. I think he's going to be a surprise in this draft, maybe a top 15 guy. But you've got raw athletic talent like Jason Owa and Kwity Paye. You've got Greg Russo, who's an angular kid, had 15.5 sacks, but sat out last year. To me, Ojulari is a guy that is going to give you tremendous value, late in round one. Probably, I don't know if the Steelers take him at 24, but probably in 25 to 32 range, and I think somebody's going to be happy with him.
You are joined by Jordan York, Mike, and of course, Rivals.com, National Director of Recruiting, Mike Farrell, breaking some things down this on Yinzer Hour tonight. Hey, you mentioned a name that has intrigued me over the past couple weeks, Jason Owe, and this is a dude who is Hercules on paper. He's got all the physical attributes, knocked everybody's socks off at his pro day, but the production wasn't quite there. Obviously, Penn State is not too far removed from Western PA, and we've got a lot of viewers and listeners who, are Happy Valley faithful. Do you think he'll be a good pro?
No, I don't. And I'm very blunt with all my answers. I'm not like, this could happen. I don't. He's a physical freak. There's no doubt about it. He ran a sub 4.4 at 269 pounds. All that. To me, though, production is extremely important. And he reminds me a little bit of Rashawn Gary, but Rashawn Gary was able to play stand-up linebacker and has done okay for the Packers, but didn't have tremendous production. But he at least had numbers. I mean, Jason has no sacks last year, barely 10 pressures, and for a kid that's as physically dominant as that, that's inexcusable to me, even at the college level. So I know he's going to test off the charts. I know he's going to be a guy that someone's going to fall in love with and someone's going to take late in the first round. He reminds me a little bit of Taco Charlton that the Cowboys took a few years ago, who I knew just wouldn't work out. And that's just my guess. Physically freak, but I just don't see the production.
It's a major bust potential. I'm going to check that box off right there because I totally agree. Make sure everybody goes and follows at Rivals Mike on Twitter. Also follow us at Yinzer Crazy Show. You're watching the Yinzer Hour right now, brought to you by EliteSportsBetting.com. Mike, I want to touch on one more player who's on that undervalued list, and I think maybe a guy who might be a bit more refined. Every time I jump on Steelers Twitter or Steelers land and suggest that they're going to take a running back with that first pick, I get the chorus of boos who are like, "You're an idiot. They need help up front first because there's nobody to run behind." And Christian Darrisaw is a dude from Virginia Tech that can provide that stability up front, it appears, from day one, right?
Yeah, he's his best football's ahead of him. He's a late bloomer. You know, he was really not very good in high school at all, and I don't know why Virginia Tech went on him because scouting him out of high school, he was super raw and just had no Power 5 ability. But he went off to prep school and he learned the craft. He got bigger, stronger. He was a basketball kid, as a lot of kids in that DMV area are, and they transitioned to football. And then you look at his career at Virginia Tech and what he's been able to do and how well he gets out of his stance, extends his arms, moves his feet. He's just a guy that walls you off. And to me, if I were picking in the first round, he wouldn't be available at 24. I like him better than Rashawn Slater, who's the number 2 offensive tackle to most people. You know, Penei Sewell's my number 1 guy, but you know, whoever gets Darrisaw is going to get a guy who's just starting to reach an upward trajectory on his football career, and that's why I like him.
Mike, do you join this mock draft party? Do you have a mock draft right now?
I haven't put out my first one yet. I do them every year. Yeah. You know, this year, man, I've kind of held off just because I usually do one after the combine, and there was no combine. There's just pro days everywhere, and I think a lot of the information is false.
Sure.
So I'm not going to do 7 mock drafts. I'll probably end up doing 2, and I'll probably put one out next week and then one right before the draft. But this has been a very weird scouting year. The advantage that I have and the good thing that in this year is that I know these kids from high school to now, and I've scouted them at every level. So to me, there's nothing new about them that you could teach me. But that combine is so important for me usually, so I decided to wait on the mock draft.
Interesting. I was just curious, gonna nudge you in the Steelers' direction and see who you had to pick for them. But it's a
I've got Naji. I think they're smart enough, and I think he's gonna slip. He's the top 10 talent to me. Everybody's a little quarterback crazy in this draft. There's a couple guys that are gonna go high that don't belong there at quarterback, and I think you're gonna see some talented guys slip, and you cannot go wrong. You know, everybody says Trent Richardson, he sucked, he was horrible. This is not Trent Richardson, first of all. I mean, Trent Richardson couldn't catch the ball out of the backfield. He was a very good runner. And yeah, there was a lot of tread on the tires. Naji's just a different cat. I mean, we had Trent Richardson as a 5-star, but Naji we had as our number 1 ahead of Cam Akers, ahead of a lot of different people because he could do so much. So I think he's going to slide to 24, and the Steelers are going to jump on it.
Do you think the fact that he's 23 will actually bother people? Yep,
I do, and I think that's one of the reasons, you know, and I think it's ridiculous. You know, he stayed to get better. He stayed to win a national championship, but he stayed to get better. Travis Etienne as well. Now, Travis didn't take the leap that Naji took. Travis had a good year, you know, and a couple fumbles, and they really weren't. If you look at the tape, you know, one of them certainly wasn't his fault that was returned for a touchdown, but Travis didn't take that leap. Naji took a leap of athleticism. He was always athletic, but he took the next step in size, speed, agility, and coming back to Alabama. So, yeah, I think but the shelf life of a running back, I mean, is what? If you're a Hall of Famer, it's 10 years. You know, you got to figure he's 23, plays to 32, has a 10-year career, and he's going to be great. So I do think that is a knock against him from scouts, though. I don't know why.
Here, I'm totally with you on that. We're talking with Mike Farrell, the National Recruiting Director for Rivals.com here on Yinzer Hour. You mentioned the sexy word just a little bit ago, quarterbacks. and everybody obviously likes to get really excited around this time of year and start throwing crazy predictions out there, like the Steelers might be interested in a Kyle Trask at 24, which I don't see. I think for the Steelers, they are going to be more inclined to potentially look later in the draft, maybe rounds 4, 5, and 6, for just a rosterable body, as Josh Dobbs probably does not return. And of course, next year, the situation is a little murky. So I'm going to throw out a couple names to you. You tell me how they would fit with the Steelers and what you think, maybe what round they will go in. Let's start with Kellen Mond.
See, now you mentioned, Kyle Trask, and there's talk of 24 Kyle Trask, which is ridiculous. Kyle Trask is a 50-50 ball guy. So, he had a tremendous year, but he also had Kyle Pitts, with the largest wingspan in the history of the world, and Kadarius Toney and Trevin Grimes was a very tall, talented wide receiver, and those guys catching a lot of 50-50 balls. And his arm strength is okay. Kellen Mond's interesting to me because the first 5 quarterbacks, we know who they're going to be. It's either going to be, Mac or Trey Lance as the last one. We're pretty sure of that. I certainly doubt Justin Fields falls beyond number 3 or 4. Somebody is going to trade up into the first round and probably take a quarterback, or someone's going to get panicky and try to take a quarterback. And Kellen Mond is that 6th guy. He's
wow, that high. Wow.
It's not going to work, but he is. Like, Kellen Mond, everybody says mechanics are horrible. They're not. He just holds the ball high. Back in the day, you were taught to hold the football by your ear, and that's what he does. Now, again, that was 20 years ago. It looks odd now, but it's not a mechanical issue. He can make all the throws, but he's maddeningly inconsistent with his accuracy, and his completion percentage worries me a lot. He can extend the play, but he's not a guy who's going to run away from people. And then people will look at his, 89-yard touchdown run in the SEC. He's got that speed. He does everything well, but nothing great. But he's that guy who someone's going to get enamored with. I don't think he's a first rounder at all, and I rated him a 5-star out of high school. I thought he was going to do the Deshaun Watson. That's what I thought. He never got the accuracy together to be Deshaun Watson, but he had a tremendous career at Texas A&M. He matured. People love Jimbo Fisher quarterbacks, but you got to remember, Jameis Winston hasn't panned out. Christian Ponder's not in the league. E.J. Manuel's not in the league. I mean, these are first rounders, and everybody loves Jimbo guys. I just think somebody might slide up, and he's my number 6 guy, but I don't think he's a first rounder.
Interesting stuff. So in the context of the Steelers, for us, not feasible. Because he's going to go 2nd or 3rd round ultimately, it seems like, and not have that Jacob Eason-like fall from last year. Let's also touch on a guy who I am the least familiar with out of this entire cast, and maybe some East Coast bias here. I don't get to watch a lot of West Coast, but maybe right around that 6th, 7th quarterback, close to Mond, and that's Davis Mills.
Yeah. This is the problem with Davis Mills. Okay. He looks unbelievable in every aspect of football. He's tall. He's filled out. He's mobile. He can throw on the run. He can make all the throws from the pocket. He is a tremendous 7-on-7 guy. It's just when that pass rush comes at him, that's when everything sort of speeds up a little bit too much for him, and he hasn't had a great career at Stanford. Somebody's going to like him. Somebody's going to take him in the 3rd round. And he's boom or bust. I mean, he could be a guy that we're talking about as an absolute steal if he puts it all together. I don't think so, because I think he would have put it together by now. He was beaten out by KJ Costello at Stanford. He never really took the job under his wing and really ran with it. And Stanford obviously has a pro-style offense where they've had some success at quarterback. So somebody's going to fall in love with him, though, like we did. I mean, he was a 5-star out of high school, a Georgia kid. Good value in round 3, but I don't know if he's going to be, he's a Mason Rudolph. That's what he is. Not a starter, but, a solid backup.
you just had about 20 Steelers fans throw up into their garbage can nearby. If they're having a beer or dinner currently. All right, this last guy I want to show on is a dude I wrote about 2 months ago. And the title of my article was "The Perfect Lottery Ticket Type Late Round Quarterback for the Steelers." Former Georgia quarterback, former Wake Forest quarterback, I should say, turned Georgia quarterback. Tell me about Jamie Newman. Am I an idiot for liking Jamie Newman so much?
Okay. I like Wake Forest Jamie Newman. I like what Jamie Newman did with Sage Surratt and the weapons he had at Wake Forest. I think Jamie Newman has made some really terrible, horrible football decisions. Opting out was just bad news. There was talk that he wasn't going to win the job, and that's why he did it. So that concerns me a bit because UGA started off last season with Stetson Bennett as their quarterback. JT Daniels was injured, and Dwan Mathis is horrible. So who was beating him out? I mean, a gimpy JT or two just awful quarterbacks. So he worries me. You know, you see him on film. He's a huge kid. He's very mobile. He's changed his release. He used to have a big wind-up release. It's compact. He's attractive because the size and the ability to move. I just worry like heck that he couldn't go in there and win that Georgia job. And, you know, I think that's why he opted out. I think it wasn't COVID. I don't think he cost himself millions of dollars because had he gone to Georgia and started, he would be in the first round discussion. That's how physically talented he is. But there's something there I don't like.
Interesting. All right, so here's what I'll eventually settle on is Steelers just stay away from a quarterback then early and you know maybe if a Davis Mills does slip to a second compensatory pick of the fourth round, you could pull the trigger there.
You're not going to find your franchise quarterback this year late. Just not going to.
Jordan, let's transition to Pitt, man. I know you wanted to pick Mike's brain a little bit on this enticing class.
Yeah, so we actually had, 2 weeks ago, we had Jason Pinnock, who wasn't invited to the draft combine. Obviously, 6 Panthers were, Jimmy Morrissey, DeMar Hamlin, Paris Ford, Patrick Jones, those guys. With Pitt, obviously, I cover Pitt, and, it's been disappointing in the ACC, but they have produced a lot of NFL talent. And I just kind of wanted to get your take on, how many Panthers you see, getting drafted this April.
That pro day was a disaster. And I'm not sure if they did the right thing and fixed the pro day, which is what everybody does. Yeah. Paris Ford fell out of the draft with a 4.9. I mean, I don't think he's going to be drafted. Twyman, 5'2" something, which doesn't matter for a defensive tackle, but the short arm guys are expected to put up 40 reps on the bench. But it just wasn't a good pro day for those guys, and a lot of them were in the third round, second round discussion. Ford obviously left early, and there's question marks about that. Twyman opted out. There's question marks about that. Jones didn't have a great Senior Bowl week. There's questions about that. I think they'll probably have 3 or 4 guys drafted, but
that's what I was.
If they could erase that pro day, they would. And the recruiting portion of things, the interesting part about that is you have to fix your pro day, and by fix your pro day, I mean you got to make sure everybody tests well. You just got to. You're big name guys. So if you're looking at Pitt, you're like, they're not developing kids. I mean, Paris Ford was faster in high school, so kids think. And that doesn't help recruiting either. So that was just a disastrous day.
Yeah. It probably doesn't bode well ultimately for, as you just mentioned, the 2022 class. But this current crop of Panthers seems pretty legit. You guys have them ranked 22nd overall currently on your Rivals Top 100 recruiting classes. That is ahead of Auburn, Florida State, and I've got to say it, Jordan, this will make you smile, Penn State as well. Seems like Pat Narduzzi did a pretty good job recruiting this group of talent.
Yeah, and I will say, listen, Penn State had a smaller class, so it's all relative. Pitt had 23 commitments. We count the top 20. And so if you don't have 20, you're going to have less points, and you're going to be ranked less. So I wouldn't say quality-wise the Pitt class is better than Penn State, but I will say quality-wise it's one of the better ones they put together since Dave Wanstead years and years ago. On the defensive side of things, it's extremely impressive. They hit needs, obviously at defensive back, but their defensive line with Naji Johnson and Elliott Donald. Naquan Brown is a linebacker who can grow into a defensive end. Dorian Ford's a big-time defensive tackle. Offensively, I worry a little bit. They didn't hit a home run there. They did get some good football players, but defensively, you're going to really hear about this class in a few years.
Hey, I saw you gave a comment to the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette recently when they were talking about this recruiting class, and you mentioned Pitt wide receiver coach Chris Beatty having a large influence on the Virginia area. Can you talk a little more about that?
Well, he was the coach at Lansdowne when Percy Harvin was there. He's got tremendous connections, not only in the Virginia Beach area and Chesapeake area, but also all through the DMV. And when you look at some of these guys that committed to the Malik Newton's, a near 4-star running back, Naquan Brown was committed to LSU, and Miles Alston, Jaden Bradley, Rodney Hammond. He was the MVP recruiting-wise for Pitt, and he's always been an excellent recruiter. He did very well at West Virginia also. Losing him hurts because that's an area that I think is ripe for the picking. Virginia isn't recruiting overly well. Brocco Mendenhall is still sort of getting his feet wet in the area because the staff is not well versed in Virginia. And Virginia Tech under Fuente can't seem to keep kids in state. So I think that was a little niche that they had with Beatty, who's a legend as a coach there because of Percy. And now he's gone. So he did a great job. He was one of our top 25 recruiters. He's off to the NFL for a short stint. Guys who recruit that well don't stay in the NFL too long. He'll be back as a coordinator for somebody. And we'll see where he lands. And I just think, whatever they could have done to hold on to him probably should have been done, but I don't know the details of it all.
Beatty, a legend in the coaching ranks, and Mike Farrell, certainly a legend in the scouting ranks. Hey, dude, it's been a pleasure. I guess I got to ask you one thing before we let you go. What's going on with the helmet rack behind you? You still working on filling it out?
Well, in front of me are all the cool ones, right? So,
okay.
So I can watch them and look at them.
We got the backside.
So I'm filling the backside. Yeah, we got, I don't know who's back there. I think we got Marino and who the heck is back
Just
there?
the Marino, no big.
Yeah, we got Marino, and then we got a Cowboys with Staubach and Dorsett and Emmett. I got a Maryland one just because I like it. Diggs is going to sign that one. But the front here, I've got, my Rams, Aaron Donald signature, and he doesn't sign much. I'm a big collector. I think, it's just an addiction. And, to get Aaron Donald and Eric Dickerson on the same Rams helmet, it's going to be worth something someday. And
that's cool.
I love it. I don't know why. Why do we love football helmets? I think it's because we grew up, watching football and our legends and idols were all, wearing helmets and uniforms and all that stuff. And then we get older and we're like infatuated with football. And maybe it's like shoes and purses for women.
Yeah, I think that's a fair analogy. Dude, I think you've got me beat by a little bit because I over here I have like my fidget spinner on this show, and I just realized that it's my Gio Gonzalez signed baseball. So I think that Aaron Donald and Eric Dickerson helmet has me beat a little bit, but just a little bit. But hey, man, I'm right with you. Some Clemente action figures right around here, dude. I mean,
starting lineup, man. I used to collect starting lineups too, and the Marino's back there. It's not on purpose because I'm doing this. It just so happens I ship them around a lot, but it's just fun. And listen, I've gotten to meet Eric Dickerson, Dan Marino, and Aaron Donald, and guys like that. I get to scout Aaron Donald and make him a 3-star in high school, and now he's making me look stupid. He's got family in this class, and I made sure I didn't make the same mistake with Elliott. It's really just fun, to sort of meet some of these guys. But then some you meet, you don't want to meet. Like, it's very iffy to meet your idols. Be careful.
Oh man, that sounds like a perfect segue to have you back on another time and begin to jump into one of those stories, because they sound a bit dangerous. But you can't leave us on that. We're gonna get you back in a month or two to recap draft, man, if you're all for it. Hey, that's Rivals.com's Mike Farrell, the godfather of recruiting. Follow him on Twitter at RivalsMike. Of course, check out Rivals.com and all of his great stuff leading up to the draft and, of course, the upcoming college football season. Dude, let's do it again sometime. Thank you.
Thank you. Anytime.
It's been a blessing. It always is here on the Yins Are Crazy podcast. I want to thank my guy Jordan York, who, of course, was heard from on that interview with Mike Farrell. And I also want to thank both guests, Mike and Isaac Redman, for joining us today. We got some really special announcements forthcoming, as I mentioned before. Pirates relief pitcher David Bednar, the Pittsburgh native, will be joining us at some point, so stay tuned for that. That'll be on the podcast. And then Yinzeritas, as I mentioned, guys, our newest show. I'm so excited to be expanding and to give a voice to some really incredible Pittsburgh talent that deserves to be showcased. They'll have a YouTube series that we already started publishing. As I mentioned, the teaser episode is out on YouTube. You can find it under Yins Are Crazy. Just go ahead over there and subscribe. We're also doing some jersey giveaways this week to help promote the Yinzeritas show. And the first one is Eric Ebron. We have an Eric Ebron autographed jersey that we are giving away to somebody on Twitter just for being a fan. How about that? All right, we're a fan of all you guys as well. And as we always say at the end of every podcast, we love Yins. Yins, please do us one favor and stay crazy, but also stay safe. We're still in a pandemic. All right, I'll catch you next time.